Uh, I'm Steve, this is Lauren, so rather than having an old engineer bore you for an hour, Lauren's gonna pitch in here and throw in a few comments, do a Torch and Gracie thing here, I guess. So welcome to the class. You'll probably have a lot of questions. If it's a real urgent question, go ahead and ask it. If not, kind of wait till the end. And we're gonna try to blow through this as quick as we can. Now, one thing I wanna point out is, where's the pointer on this thing? I think that's it. We are Texas Master Gardeners. Texas Master Gardeners falls under the umbrella of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. So you'll use these a lot interchangeably, but this is under the Master Gardeners are under the Extension umbrella. So why are we here? What, where, when, and why? As an engineer, we always ask all these stupid questions. We're going to talk about, I'm going to probably spend the first third or so talking about some general things. Each of these slides, you can do a 1 hour class or a whole day class on some of these slides. So we're going to blow through them, and these are things that you just have to consider. So there's planting, soil prep, we're going to talk about. Then we'll get into what to plant when and where, and then why. You might, we're going to talk a little bit about why. That's my grandson picking a fresh strawberry. That's a pretty good why. So before you start, think about who's going to do the work. You're going to have willing workers or not. I mean, for me, a lot of the gardening is it's like cooking a brisket. By the time you get through cooking that darn thing, you don't want it. It takes forever. So I'm the planter grower. My wife's the gatherer or picker. How many is it for? You just have to think it through. Are we gonna you just want to be able to go out and cut a few herbs and veggies and make a salad? Are you going to put things away? Are you going to freeze things? What are you going to do with your bounty? And a lot of that's going to, and of course, how much room do you have? That's going to determine how big your garden's going to be. Grow what you like to eat, and I think that covers it. Anything?
Yeah, I would just like to add, just because I made this mistake at the beginning of my gardening deal 25 years ago, but start small. Don't start big. Like when I say small, like you can do a 4x4 or a 4x6 or something like that. It's just so much easier because, like Steve said, by the time if you planted a spring garden, by the time you hit July or August, you don't even want to water. So start small. Don't do like I did and have 3 4x6 beds.
So yes, some of the obvious things: start good sun, well-drained soil, build it up if you can. Avoid septic tanks. Don't put it under your oak tree. And then which way is the sun going? So you can do small gardens. You can do little bitty gardens. This one right here, a friend just put in, and these are 4 by 24, so it had very few wood cuts. You could use standard size wood. We like 4 foot wide because most of us can reach into the middle. So don't make it too wide. I've got some 2 foot wide ones. I still don't know what I'm doing with those. That's a little big, and there's some other examples there. Can't have a slide without talking a little bit about organic gardening and any gardening for that matter. When you call up here, you talk to your agent, you talk to anybody. First thing they're going to ask you is, did you get a soil test? So we've got some examples here, some samples. You can get your soil tested. It's relatively cheap. It's mailed in to Texas A&M. And go to the website. There's different tests you can run. And if you're like me and you still have questions, pick up the phone and call them, and they'll give you guidance. They'll tell you which buttons to check, which tests you want. Once you get that soil test, you'll have different kinds of amendments. I'm not going to go into all of those. But the soil test itself, here's an example, will tell you what you need, what you don't need. So this is a typical, I got this from Boone, he's our Grand Poobah, county agent. He leads us. You'll get a test that looks something like this, and you'll see these bars. So it's typical for Fort Bend County to be low on nitrogen, unless you're in an area that's had other stuff going. pH can be a little on the high side. This one looks a little high at 8.1 to me. And then organic matter. So you'll get this recommendation on the right, how much fertilizer to add and how many other things you need. In this case, we really just need a little nitrogen. There's websites, books, on how to calculate this. Call Fort Bend Master Gardeners Hotline. They can help you do the calculations on how much fertilizer you need if you don't see it or don't find it handy. So nitrogen sources, you can, a lot of our ag guys just like high nitrogen fertilizers. If you're trying to stay away from that, you can go organic. You can use blood meal, organic fertilizers, and organic materials. And the organics are going to be a little bit of a slow release. Another thing I like to do, and a lot of places recommend, like if you're planting onions and some of the high nitrogen stuff, is put your nitrogen down a couple of weeks before you plant. Okay, so that was a couple hours, several hours of classes right there. That's good we had a smart group. Mulching, let's talk about that in a minute. You know, why, regulate the soil temperature, it helps retain the moisture, retards bolting, retards the weeds, and eventually the mulch should go back into the ground and help feed. Here's a couple of pictures. I'll talk about that on the next slide. Types of mulch. Plastic mulch is something that's used by large growers.
Does everybody know what bolting is? That's like, what would be an example? Say if you were growing lettuce, that'll be something for this season. So you'll have the leaves, but when if it's too warm, it's going to send up a taller, tougher stalk, and it'll have a little looks like buds on it. That's going to be the seeds. But it makes the current leaves of lettuce really bitter tasting. So that happens to herbs, vegetables, and stuff like that. So that's bolting, it's basically going bad. The plant's not bad, but eating it may not be too good.
It's going to seed. It's trying to go to seed. Seed, feeling that warmth and trying to seed. It can really ruin a stand of basil. Plastic, something that I don't really recommend. I threw it up here. Something a lot of the big gardeners do. It's easy to put down. It helps when you have it, but you got to get it picked up, and then you got to do something with it. So you may see some recommendations. Newspaper, I didn't think we needed a picture. If you're really young and don't know what a newspaper is, ask somebody else around here. It's not something on the screen. Organic mulches, leaves and pine needles. We don't have a lot of pine needles down here, but you know, I just blow a lot of my leaves over to the hedge on the side of the yard, and then I have a big pile of leaves that I can put in my various beds for mulch. Composted cotton burr rice hulls, those are all things you can buy. Used to be pretty cheap 30 years ago, but now they found other uses and they found out they can sell it. Alfalfa I've never really used. Grass clippings would work great. Clean hay. The alfalfa hay that people buy for the horses, now it's gotten expensive. So maybe not this year. Maybe when we get a little rain. But I found a farmer and some of these feed stores. You'll find that they don't put herbicides on them. You want it without herbicides, and you'll find that it's really clean without weeds. But that's the good, clean Bermuda horse hay. Ask questions when you buy anything. So you can go to the feed store, you can go to the farmer, and you can ask them. But again, I can't even afford the hay for my horses. Remember what that is? We got some the last couple of days. It's rain. In 4.5 years of college, and I get my son to help me with this. Rain barrels, rain's best. One thing I learned a long time ago from a farmer, when you have a lot of lightning in the rain, you get a lot of nitrogen. You get nitrogen in the water. If you do rain barrels, this is rather high end. This is what Master Gardeners put in. But you can hose in spray, you can overhead sprinkle, but we really like drip irrigation. So when you're irrigating, the first question is how much? You want an inch. Okay, you want an inch a week at least. Use your judgment. If it's 100 degrees outside, you may need to water more than once a week. Well, you probably do need water more than once a week. You should water more than once a week. I like to water deep. I like to water a lot. It's not a yard. It's not an established lawn where you turn turn the sprinkler on for 15 minutes twice a week. You have to water and water deep. When you have new seeds, you have new plants or transplants, you need to get water on them every day. So get out there, look at it, see how much water you have. But it takes a week or two to get this new stuff established. We have a lot of clay in our soil around here, so that helps hold the moisture. Wait till the top of the soil gets a little bit of a crust on it. What else? Did I miss anything there? Use a moisture
Just
meter.
how to water new seeds.
Yeah, just how to water new seeds.
That's
Oh, that's different.
another thing.
That's it. This is yeah, a seed that's planted, you're gonna wanna keep watering. I got another trick I'll show you. Well, actually right here. This is the drip irrigation that Master Gardeners use. I think you can get this at a lot of the big box hardware stores, that little round tube. We like it because it's efficient. You're not spraying it up into the air. It goes into the ground. You can use it throughout your landscape. You can use these little micro drips to handle some of your potted plants, and it's easy to hide under the mulch. I use this drip tape. It's cheaper, covers a large area, and it's got a little emitter every 1 foot. So one of the tricks is I put this down in a straight line. It doesn't always stay in a straight line because the sun and the wind gets to it. You can see it's a little crooked, and ignore my weeds. Those are giant weeds. You put that drip tape, whatever you're using, down, and then you've got a marker every foot, so you know where to put your seed. And you can put your seed in a nice moist soil. Same thing with your transplants. That's just a handy little trick. I don't know if it's endorsed by A&M or anything like that, but that's one reason why I like it. This is cheaper, but won't last as long as the other, but neither one hold up really well to a sharp hoe. And your weeds. Go ahead.
Does everybody understand the difference between, and Steve was a great example of saying how you want to water deeply versus not so deeply. The main difference is if, and this would apply to your lawns as well. You want the deep watering because you want to think roots down, not sideways. And that's really applicable to your lawn, which is not in this topic, but you just want, because that's how it's going to survive this drought. So when you water, you want to look, like you said, to an inch, but use your own discretion, but think deep. So not every day just splashing it, maybe twice a week, but deep.
Yeah, I was talking to some guys that had this drip the other day, and they were doing the 25 minutes on and off thing, and I'm like, you know, according to my calculations, you need I don't want my drip tape 4 to 6 hours or longer. You can do the calculations, we can help you with the calculations, but I looked at this guy, so according to my calculations, what you've done here, you need 8 hours of watering to get this thing watered, get an inch of rain, or an inch of water. He looked at it and me and said, well, that would sure make it wet. Yeah, that's the idea. You've got this as a handout. I've colored in some of the vegetables we're talking about. This is one of my favorite slides out there. It's on the website as well. Use it. It's a guide, okay? Everything in planting is a guide. My wife goes, well, if we plant beans today, what day will we have beans? Yeah, what's the temperature? How much fertilizer to put on there? Did you water it? So these are just guides, but these are guides as to when to plant. You can seed it. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the various plants about how you do that. But you can see where we are. We're August, still a little early. And we should be putting, I think for our garden sale, we're doing transplants now. We're seeding the transplants now. So if you're going to do transplants or have tomatoes, you should be seeding now. Not in the garden, but in the transplant pots. Okay, this is one off the Master Gardeners. If you're a real nerd like me, you can build all kinds of spreadsheets and figure out what day you're going to get those beans. Well, not exactly. Two of my favorite resources are, where'd they go? All right, here's one. This one's on the website, whoops. Stay back here, Steve. There's a recommended vegetable varieties for Fort Bend County. That's an example on the left. That's on the website. It's got everything you need to know. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you how many days, what day, and what to do, what and where. Go get this resource. In addition, on the AgriLife website, which, I don't know, I guess this is gonna be posted at some point in time where you can get this or take a picture of it real quick. You can go in and click on these various vegetables and it'll give you all these details as well. That's the big one. Now you don't need me. And that's the whole idea here, is tell you guys where to go to get what. If I sat here and told you how deep to plant every seed, we'd be here all day and bored. Lauren, you want to talk about crop rotations? That's your favorite slide, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm just commenting, this is my favorite slide, because really people don't think about moving your crops, no matter what the size of your bed is. It could be from one side to the other or a completely different bed. But it's very important because certain plants, like let's say your nightshade family, that's the one where you're going to see tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and stuff like that. If you keep planting it in the same area and not doing anything, it's slowly going to decline over the different harvests that you have. So you want to move them around. Like don't, and also that applies for another reason, but also with like zucchini, because there's a moth that lays its eggs, it comes out and nibbles right at the root, so right at the base of the plant. You could get a little knife, find it, take it out, tape it, I don't know. But if you move it around, it doesn't, the mother moth can't find it. So the rotation of your plants is very important. The main reason is the nutrients that the plants will take out in that area. So if you move it around, that won't happen. But remember, this is also with continued fertilizing or composting or whatever you do to maintain your garden. Anybody have any questions? Because it can be confusing.
Okay, we're here today at
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Oh, go back to the slide. Oh, I just wanted to add, if anybody is taking serious notes, this will be on our website, this slide, in about 2 days. So you can print it out yourself or read it and go over it.
Lauren, can I clarify after this class, in about 3 days, we will send a copy of the video for this class and everyone can register. So you'll have the video published.
Yeah, this whole.
Sorry, did we answer the question? Okay. We're gonna play just a bit of Boone.
We're here today at Caldwell Nursery in Fleet, Texas, and we're going to talk a little bit about seeds. Okay. First thing here is that we've got a new rack of seeds. These are fresh seeds that just came in this season. That's what you want to look for. Don't buy old vegetable seeds.
We're gonna cut him off because he talks forever. We're gonna cover the same thing. A lot of these are Boone slides and his videos, so I asked him if we could use them. He said, sure. Something about it's a smart man that stands on the shoulders of giants. I'm not sure what he means. So let's talk about where you're going to get your seed sources and some tips. Local nurseries work well. It's, feed stores. He was at a feed store just down the road. Online sources. We've made a list of those that the master gardeners have used and like. And then of course you can go to box stores, but check the package. A lot of what you're buying here when you buy transplants or plants or seeds is knowledge. You want to be able to go on. I like Johnny Seeds. I buy a lot from them. That's the seed package. It's got a ton of information on it. In addition, they've got a ton of information on their website, germination guide. Now they're in Maine, but they do well selling seeds down here. And the other thing that's great is in this particular website, they answer the phone. They have somebody real. They have people. It's kind of nice. But you're looking for germination temp, the timing, when you should plant it. Talk about that in a minute. Depth, distance, you're gonna have to thin it. You stick it on top, you stick it 1.5 inches in the ground. All that information should be knowledgeable on the website or where you're getting your plants. And if it's not, go someplace else. I would say that with one exception. I like some of the feed stores like in East Bernard and Needville. They had, I'm sorry, the old school little drawers where you can go pull out the drawer and get a scoop full of seeds so that you don't have to buy 5,000 tomato plants. And they have somebody there that's knowledgeable that will generally help, but generally they're buying in bulk and offering it to you as a convenience. I know they're not making much money on $1 worth of seed, but generally, I've had good luck with those places because they're buying local bulk, they know what they want, and they're helping out their friendly farmer friends. And the last thing they want to do is make the guy that buys $200 worth of horse food every week mad because he got a bad bean seed. So they generally take care of their seed. And they may have help, they may not, but you can always look it up.
Where was that?
Do what?
Where was that?
Some of the feed stores, any small town, we don't really have any here locally that carry
Southwest
seeds.
Fertilizer on
Southwest Fertilizer in Houston, EB Mills in East Bernard, there's a Needville feed. If you want to drive out there, so one of the things, if you're doing this really small garden, you can spend a lot of money on seed really quick just buying gas and get it shipped. So think about what you're doing and where you're getting it. Talk about transplant sources, again, the same thing. A couple of local nurseries we like are Caldwell and Enchanted Gardens. I've got a guy that's used to be a grower that's doing a bunch of seeds for us now. And it's kind of a pain because I don't know what to do with 250 pepper plants. But he just knows big. But, of course, I first should have mentioned the top Fort Bend Master Gardener vegetable sale will be October the 15th. So that's Saturday. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna ask where that's going
Normally here someplace around the fairgrounds or.
It's over kind of, I don't know if you know where the range or the greenhouse is. It's the parking lot that's
over
back
there.
here.
Yeah.
Where-
It'll be like here.
Yeah, it's here.
It'll be on the west side. It'll.
Bring a wagon.
Oh, yeah, wagons. But yeah, if you got a wagon, bring a wagon. Come early. It's kind of fun. Stand in line a little bit. It's not as hectic as some of the other sales, but and again, when you come here, you're buying knowledge. There'll be 30 or 40 or 50 of us standing around talking about what you need, what to plant, where to plant it, so forth and so on. And that's why I like it. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I just went back just a little bit when we were talking about seeds, and I know you mentioned that you were getting ready to start with tomato seeds and putting them in plants and things like that. I love the calendar, but I'm always not confident on whether or not I'm looking at the suggestion for seed, direct zone, or transplants. It's not really on the calendar.
That's exactly right. And so, like on the Johnny's website, it'll add clarity. So on this one, our little calendar,
Yeah.
that's okay. If it's a transplant, that's when to plant the transplant. If it's a seed, it's when to plant the seed. And the seeds take what, 3 weeks to 4 weeks, 6 weeks before you're ready to transplant them.
If you're just gonna go by the nursery and get a packet of seeds, just turn it over, look for the date, make sure that it hasn't expired, and then it will tell you what to look for when it first germinates, and then how long it will take until you harvest. I would say on an average, like, if you wanted to put a cherry tomato in right now, those do really well at this time of year. It's about 90 days. So first frost is usually around the beginning of November, so you want to count backwards. So if you get a transplant, that's already got you set up for about 3 to 4 weeks because it's already growing.
And the local nurseries time the delivery with when to plant them. So if you try to go get Brussels sprouts in April, you're not going to find them. So they do, yeah, you'll find them when it's the right time as well. And talk to the nursery. If anybody else has any sources, that's fine. You can mention it here. I don't really have any. Sometimes the feed stores, driving through Belleville, picked up a bunch of tomatoes in 6-packs really cheap. So just keep your eyes and ears open. They'll have local growers and transplants. Online sources I don't have much experience with. Some people have. And if you have a lot of questions, you can go to our website. It'll talk about it a little bit. One more thing is, Lauren, when you're picking out when you're picking out your transplants, you want to make sure you got good roots. So I'll set these up here, you can pass them around. So I just picked these up at Enchanted Gardens yesterday, and you can see what the roots should look like. Or that's a good example. You want to be able to pull it out of there and see roots. Oh yeah, I got one more point on that is there's some growers around here that will sell at the farmer's market.
It's on your.
Thanks. Any questions? So, Lauren mentioned, look at the dates on the seeds or look at when to plant. A lot of those things, the seed that you'll find in the big box stores and so forth, will have this map. This is the US map, of course. And we're down here in zone 9A. So you're going to be looking for those zones. My wife loves these. She's been to Italy a couple of times. And she loves these Italian tomatoes and she wants me to grow them. And I go, but honey, there's zone 5 and we're zone 9. But you can fool it. Well, there's people that try. So that's the key is look for not only wind, but you got to get wind in the right area. Texas, being its own nation, our state, you used to say pledge allegiance to the state of Texas. We have our own little areas because we are so big, and we're somewhere over here between region 3 and region 4. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of on that, and so you'll see dates like, what is that? Beans, lima beans, August 20th to September 1. That's a window, somewhere in there, guys. You can go, you obviously go much later, longer, shorter. Onion seed, I'll do onion seed, I'll do onions. Where's another one? Parsley, October 10th through November 1. So it's just a guide, and look at the weather. If there's a hurricane in the Gulf, you may not want to plant this weekend. You know, if you know it's going to be hot, I mean, you can look out a week or two. If you know it's going to be hot, may not, unless you want to water a lot, you may not want to put it in the ground. If you say, hey, there's a lot of rain coming, it's going to be cool the next week, okay, put it in the ground. Get your beds ready now. I guess that's another thing we don't really have a slide on, but you should be getting, while it's nice and hot, get your beds ready. The more time you have, the better. Don't till and plant the next day. I mean, you can, I have, but it helps you get your beds ready. Starting at the right time. This is a video where Boone eventually talks. Boone. But this shows the sea of transplants at one of our nurseries. And, well, Boone. Well, if you're not going to talk. Anyway, one of the slides I've added to this year's presentation is starting your own seeds for transplants. You can go buy your seeds. And then if you want to do your own transplants, don't just go grab potting soil or some dirt and stick it in a pot. Use a germination mix. A germination mix is a mixture of half peat and half vermiculite. And you can buy the germination mix as a germination mix. You can mix your own. And you can go into small plugs or larger pots, but you'll want to add some nutrition, be it a liquid fertilizer, or has to grow or organic fertilizer. Or an organic fertilizer, but you'll want to add some nutrition to that. There are pages and pages and tons of information on how to do this with these Aggie links. I like to start with these little trays, seeding trays that make little pods. You can transplant the pods, or you can go from a little bitty pod to a 4-inch pod, then to the ground. The way we do it here is we start in these little trays, and they're little 1 inch by 1 inch. We get them started there for a couple 3 weeks, and then we go into the 4-inch pot, and then we sell them to you. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an advantage to starting your seeding with artificial lighting?
Yeah, light's good. She asked if there was an advantage to start with artificial lighting, and it obviously helps. Now, one of the things I don't even have in here, but you bring up a good point, you'll want to harden your transplants quite often before you put them in the ground. That means leave them outside for a day or two, or let them get used to being outside if they came straight out of a greenhouse. That's a good point. The timing, you got to look at your timing, when you get them in at the right time. Pay attention to the depth of the seed. You put it on top, you put it in the ground, follow the directions. And another mistake people have is use a mister when you water. After you put this little bitty seed in this really, really fine material, and then you hit it with a water hose, who knows what happens to that seed? So they, a lot of these hoses have mister settings, or you can actually buy a mister. It's like anything else, so it'll sell you anything. And then the other thing is be prepared to thin. That's one of Boone's points. Is you're probably not going to get just one seed in every little pot. It's kind of tough unless you have a big commercial seeder, which you don't want to do. Like Fred, my buddy, he plants 328 seeds in one deal at one time in about 2 minutes. We don't do that, Fred. So you'll be prepared to thin those out. You may get 2 or 3 little plants in that little seed pot, in that little pot. You'll want to be able to thin those out so you just have one good, healthy plant. And these websites are great. I mean, again, we can spend days on that. Okay, now let's get to why we're here a little bit. How are we doing on time? We're good. We've got to hurry. So, following Boone's old lead, we've got warm season, which is, I guess, late summer, early fall, and then we have some cooler stuff. So, what do we plant in September? You can see the list. Potatoes. I got this note I found the other day. Late August, early September on a waning moon. On a waning moon. Buy the proper seed potatoes, and when after you pick up, store them dirty after the harvest. But anyway, I think one of the key points here is that I want to make here is the little red.
Okay,
The little red potatoes
well,
are like sugar. You grow
what are we growing here in this garden? Any ideas?
potatoes, but
Kinda hard.
got it. Okay, we're running late. I like the little red potatoes. I used to laugh at people that grew potatoes because they're what, $5 for 10 pounds. But the little you can't buy the sweetness that you'll get growing your little red potatoes here. It's like sugar. Green beans, snap beans. I mean, you can't grow a bean, we're in trouble. Stick the seed in the ground, follow the directions. September, you can go September, October, I think. Everything says moderately fertile soil, everything says water me. We don't have to talk about that. Harvest it when it's young and tender. Don't do like my mother-in-law. Hey, wait till they get really big, you get more. You also get string in your teeth. You did the same thing with oak, it's like eating wood. So, I like beans in the fall. I think they have a longer growing season. If you plant them at the right time, my kids are now spoiled. They want fresh green bean casserole on Thanksgiving. Not the canned green beans, but it's kind of fun to go out and pick fresh green beans for your casserole on Thanksgiving. Lima beans, I'm not a big fan. Again, follow the lead, plant September. Bush types, both of these work well. The easy harvest when the seeds are a little more mature. Squash. This is a harvest of squash in our house. I like to plant seeds. You can do it in September. You can push it back a little bit. Probably the sooner the better. You get a fairly quick crop. Hazy, everything wants moderate fertility. And I keep getting asked, why can't we grow winter squash in the winter? You grow winter squash in the summer because it takes so darn long to grow. It's 3 months plus to get a crop of winter squash. So love the yellow squashes, the zucchinis, scallop squashes. There's a golden zucchini out there. If you've ever had it, it's fantastic. It's kind of a hybrid seed that you buy, and it's a yellow zucchini, and it's really good. Any questions on squash? No. Edible pod peas, again, same thing. I guess one of the advantages of this is you can plant them vertically. You can get your little wire trellis or little bull wire, I guess we call it, or hog panel or whatever, and let them grow up.
Does everybody understand when we say bush type or vine type? Okay, so bush, you don't need it, when it comes to the vining, like with some tomatoes, I mean, a lot of tomatoes are bush type. They need support or a trellis, so I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that.
Yeah, again, these are easy to grow. Now, check back years, and nobody ever talks about strawberries around here anymore. 100 years ago, this was a great area for strawberries and citrus and even avocados. So we grew some strawberries last year. I think we put them in late summer, early fall. Plant, I think you may get them in the greenhouses in November. They're hard to find. You just get them, stag them up, put them in the ground. And we were picking strawberries in early January. And you get strawberries January, February, March. Starts getting a little warm in April, and there's tricks to extending the growing season, like shading the plants in the afternoon. And yeah, I'm not gonna work that hard. But I think we had a guy out here that had shaded strawberries, and had people crawling on the ground. But anyway, there are ways to do it. There's this website, the AgriLife Extension. There's books on it. There's tons of information on growing strawberries. It's not that hard. I think one of the keys is it likes a low pH. We have higher pH. Use pine needles or pine straw to help lower the pH, get a little acidity into the soil. Rainwater helps as opposed to groundwater. North-south orientation. Any questions? Some great strawberries out there. Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by north-south?
Your rows are going to run north to south versus east to
So
west.
then they'll get the east and the rising and setting sun.
I planted mine east-west. They did fine. And I know it's not a vegetable, but maybe there are tomatoes. We talk about tomatoes in the spring. I'll talk about the cool season vegetables. Plant them September through February somewhat. You got to be careful. Talk about that a little bit. Heavy feeders. I know Boone's been out to my place. I guess that's a couple pictures of it. That's a lot of veggies. He likes to put a lot of nitrogen on stuff. I'm not a big nitrogen feeder, but I use a lot of organics. And one of the things we haven't talked about, it's on the slide, is you're putting in a fresh garden, instead of putting in a couple inches of organic material, good mulch, if you can get it or get that much, but the more organic you have, the better. And again, if you stay organic, you can go with blood meal, organic fertilizers. MicroLife makes great fertilizers. It's slower release, takes a little bit longer, may take a little bit more, but it stays there longer. Okay, my favorite is broccoli. Some people I've got a couple neighbors that direct seed. I never have. I always go with transplants, Master Gardeners or various places, or Fred lately. You plant the transplants in September, September, October, again in maybe late January. This year, Fred showed up at my place with, I think, about 500 different plants on January 1. We stuck them in the ground and it froze January 6th. So pay attention to the weather. And so use your judgment on when to plant early. The varieties here are like Pac-Man. I'm going to say try to push that date back a little bit. The last 2 years we've had warm falls. I did not get the nice pretty heads of broccoli. Instead it bolted, which meant it wanted to go to the seed, which meant I got a lot of the little florets all the way over around the plant, which my wife loves picking. I'd rather pick one of these than a whole bunch of the little florets. And don't forget broccolini. Everybody know the difference? Broccolini will come in just with the florets. It'll have a longer stem, it'll have a smaller stem. It's really good. It'll be really dark green, both of them will be. But there's a lot more nutrition in those stems. The nutrition is in the stems. Anything else on my favorite? Right?
Well, on the broccoli, I would say you could almost do what's called successive planting. You know, put what your family can eat, then maybe 10 days later put in another one so that it keeps going on. Don't be afraid of frost when it comes, not a freeze, just a little frost, because that makes broccoli a lot sweeter. It's been my experience.
Oh, and the other thing is, once you pick that head, leave it, and you'll get the florets. I've gotten florets up until April, well into April. That's just, and my wife one day called me up and said, "What's that plant, man? That's the best green I ever had." And That's broccoli. She was eating the leaves. Which I guess is okay. We're still here. Cauliflower, I put into pretty colors. Aggie and Longhorn, I guess we've developed here in Texas. Again, I like transplants. It's pretty much like the broccoli. Any comments there? Grandkids kind of get kind of goofy when we like to make, mash them up, make like substitute mashed potatoes or something like purple mashed potatoes. Cabbage. There's various varieties that work around here. You'll find the transplants. I've never done a direct seed. These are some of the examples that work. Now, when you buy cabbage, it's one of those things you gotta think about how much you're planting and how long and how many you're gonna feed. I know early on in my small gardens, I go, oh, there's a 6-pack. I like that kind. There's a 6-pack of this kind. Let's try that. Oh, I want some purple over there. There's not. Next thing you know, I got 18 cabbages. We eat about 3 a year. We did some bok choy this year. It was a big hit. Bok choy is really good. Try it. I guess it's part of the cabbage family, but it makes some great soups. Did we put Brussels sprouts? That's what I was looking for next. First time I planted Brussels sprouts, it was mixed in with all those little cabbages, and I couldn't figure out why that cabbage never produced. And then finally I went out there and found this stem of Brussels sprouts rotting away. So you get the stem, it takes a little longer. Brussels sprouts take time and patience. You can look on your cheat sheets for how long it takes. And of course, like she said, the frosty weather helps. They can handle a freeze. Most of these can handle a freeze. Just not when they're just transplanted a little bitty. Yeah. Carrots. I've done well at carrots and we failed at carrots. I think one of the tricks to carrots is keeping the seed moist after you plant it. You got a fairly long season over which you can plant them, September, October. I think you plant them later and longer if you want to. You just try it, it doesn't hurt. Direct seed, lightly, you'll have to thin, most likely you'll want to thin your carrots because these bitty seeds that you got to try to get in a row or in an area. You can get up a little bit, have little carrots, and then have bigger carrots. Then pick in between and let your carrots go for some time. And they'll keep until it gets hot. A lot of these plants, I failed to mention, cabbages, whatnot, they'll keep well in the ground so long as it's cool. It starts getting hot, things start getting start bolting. Carrots will get a little bitter when it starts getting hot. That's why we grow in the winter. They grow in Utah in the summer. But they grow them up, cool season, cooler places. You don't see a lot of big carrot crops around here, except for the winter. Any questions on that? Main thing is, I think, is keep them moist when you put them in the ground. Follow the directions. Several days. Yes, ma'am.
Which of the directions that you just talked about, the cruciferous carrots, which of them do you think can do well in pots and not necessarily in the ground?
What does well in pots versus the ground?
Of carrots?
I don't know. I've never done carrots in a pot.
Any of those, she said. Any
Oh.
of the ones you discussed.
Are you
As long as
saying?
you have a big enough pot, it should be okay.
Yeah, and potatoes work really well in a pot. You put in a little bit of dirt, put your potatoes in, and then you keep adding dirt as the potato grows up, and then you get to a certain point when they're ready, you dump the dirt out, and you got potatoes. I think anything here will grow in a pot. I mean, I don't know.
There's a lot of different carrots out there, and there's one that's called Nance, Nante, and then there's some varieties in that, but some of them are the size of a golf ball. So that would grow great in pots. Because, you need to look, because there's so many carrots out there. Some are 12 inches, that's not gonna grow really well unless you've got you're talking about like a clay pot where it has a little bit of a shape to it. Yeah, they grow straight, so you're gonna want something that's even on all sides. There's collapsible pots that are great, plastic. Or a bag, yeah.
Start to bring one as an example.
Yeah.
Beets, love beets. Direct seed early. That I think they have a long growing and keeping season. when you plant a beet seed, you're not planting a seed, it's a pod. And there's anywhere from 2 to 6 seeds in that pod. So you will have to thin your beets. Now, pull them, eat the greens, eat the baby beets. But, you know, the greens are good. But I think that's probably one of the keys that people fail on is not thinning their beets, you know. And you can keep thinning as you go along, you know. You get, okay, I'm gonna pick all the beets this size, and then I'm gonna get a beet this size next to it. Don't just go pull them all up, pull up in between. And throw the young beets and the greens in a salad. Lettuce and arugula. We love lettuce. We get a lot of good lettuce. A lot of the old guys like me, we just throw seeds on the ground and get a loose leaf lettuce. You can do that and just go out and cut it, and more will grow back. Cut it, more will grow back. So, you know, my wife likes to go out and just cut some and make a salad.
Now, when you say cut it, you mean just pull off leaves, or you just?
Cut it with a pair of scissors and leave the roots. Last couple of years I've been really successful with transplants. The difference between transplant and the seed is most of the time with transplant we'll give you a head. This lady grew this at my place. That's one head of, I don't know what kind of, some sort of bilb lettuce. We get some beautiful head lettuce. It's not going to be as tight as what you get at the grocery store, but it tastes great. Pull it up, cut off the bottom, chill it. I've got a big refrigerator we can throw it in. A lot of times I like to throw it in some ice water. That will crispy it up. A lot of times you'll pick this stuff and it'll just wilt. A lot of I done. And throw it in ice water. It also gets rid of the bugs. My wife likes to have people come by and we'll have lunch and she'll go out with the people and pick fresh stuff and make a salad out of it and have all this fun. But it's kind of embarrassing when you're sitting there and there's bugs crawling out of your salad. Honey.
It's organic.
It's protein. Yeah.
When it says there, protect from afternoon sun, what's a practical way to do that?
You know, I'll be honest with you, that's just part of the old slide. I really haven't had that problem. But the best way to do it is if you've got something that you want to shade, just plant something a little taller next to it.
Like, throw your lettuce under your fall tomatoes, or if you still got whatever might be your beans, because they'll give shade, or you can use shade cloth. You know. The other thing about chilling, when I used to work at one of the nurseries around here, I had several people that said, no, I don't like homegrown lettuce, it's bitter. Adding to what Steve was saying, but some lettuce is also kind of, I don't know, if you've ever grown lettuce and you cut it, you see a little milky residue that comes out from the slice spot. That is bitter. And I mean, it's not bad. Just a lot of people don't like it, but if you chill it, that takes it away. So if you clip in the morning and you want to have something at lunch and that's not bothered by you, the fridge will take care of it. I've had that complaint a lot from children. I think adults were more adapted.
Also, when it gets too hot, doesn't like heat. So romaines work well, butterbeds, arugula is great. Some people don't like it, and so we got to move on. Spinach. A lot of people sell I drew a line through Malabar. It's not really a spinach. Lauren, you're the expert on this stuff. It's a vine. One gives you a lot.
It's a vine, you only need to buy one. It drops beautiful red seeds that I wish came in a shade of lipstick, but you'll never have to buy another one if you buy one Malabar.
And it will freeze, most spinach won't freeze. So, another great crop. Swiss chard, easy peasy. I don't know that you can kill this stuff. You can direct seed it, I've direct seeded it, I've done transplants, either way it works. I think one of the keys is as you pick it, pick the outer leaves and leave the inside, and you'll have arugula. You'll have arugula too, and Swiss chard for weeks. I mean, it just keeps giving until it gets hot. So you can have that for some time. Pick it small for your salad. When it's large, cook it like a grain with bacon. Now, maybe if you're healthy, you're probably not going to throw the bacon. Collards, kale, and kohlrabi. I've grown a lot of kale. I like the dinosaur kale. It's not necessarily up there. That's something, again, you pick the outside leaves. and you can have it for months. I mean, it'll keep, I actually had kale last a couple of years until it froze, because it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Anything to add? Questions? Good, close. Onions and garlic, buy your garlic sets when they come out in the feed store. Normally around October, November, probably more. Last couple of years they've been a little later. Stick the little onion sets, and you know what I'm talking about. That size of a small pencil, you put the onion in the ground as opposed to seed. I've never really done the seed. I guess you could try. They like a lot of water. They like a lot of fertilizer. So that's definitely one where I fertilized before and give a lot of water to it. The 10-15s, you got a lot of other sweet onions out there nowadays. Garlic takes a long time. I think it's like 11 months. And we've grown some garlic. Yeah. And I've got some, well, no, I think I killed it. I think the drought killed what I had this year's crop. But we grow that in a container, you know, just because we know it's going to take so long. Leeks, yeah, for certain soups. Just follow directions. It's a lot like an onion. Turnips and mustards. The much maligned turnips. Nobody likes turnips the way Grandma cooked them. Go to the internet. There's some great turnip recipes out there. We actually had a bunch of turnips this year accidentally. We had people making turnip chips, all kinds of turnip dishes that were actually pretty good. It takes buds change when you get older too. But you can make some flavorful stuff out of turnips. Greens are greens. There's several different kinds of greens. Radishes, you can grow anywhere, anytime. Plant them a week apart. Plant some here, plant some there. Don't plant a whole lot because you get a whole lot. How many radishes do you really eat? But they're good dividers, put in different areas. You can just stick a few here, stick a few there.
One thing great about radishes, if anybody's trying to get children into the garden, is about from the time you plant the seed to the time it's edible, it's usually less than a month. So what Steve meant by, plant a little bit here, and we're talking about time, not necessarily the space of work, because if they get really big, those are hot. They're going to be like horseradish.
Yeah, I forgot about, I lost one in the garden one time. Went out and picked one about this big. We didn't try it.
One thing we'll be covering today are herbs. Transition our herbs into the fall garden.
Okay, bud, you go talk. That's the other grandchild. You can't do one of these without putting your grandchildren in there. You're no good. So Lauren's going to talk a little bit
So
about
we're
herbs.
pretty much coming to the end. Of course, we'll be open for Q&A afterwards, but these are some of the herbs that do really well in cool season. Does anybody have, my favorite at this time of year is your parsley and cilantro, because it loves cool weather. I've even had it flattened down because it froze. It popped right back up and kept on going until it got hot. It will grow in the summertime, but unless you're really eating it like every day, this is parsley and cilantro are great examples of something that bolts like within. You might have it for a week in your garden, and then it's already set in seed. So rosemary's a perennial. Mine was actually in a pot, not even in the ground, so that means it had a lot more cool air around the roots. I've had it for years. And sage is very good in the fall. The rest of the herbs, you're going to eventually have to protect if a hard freeze is coming in. I mean, you're going to just have to put something over it. I've got one friend whose plants weren't that big, but the freeze was coming in, and so she ended up saving and getting friends, and she just cut the bottom out of like milk jugs and used that on each one, and then when the warmed up, she just popped the little top off. So it's like almost having your own personal cloche over each plant. Cloche being, those glass things that you see that people put over in up north, Mason-Dixon. So the woodier plants such as rosemary and thyme seem to do a little bit better. Thyme, I've had a tough time growing it in the summertime down here. It's just too hot. It's great for a windowsill inside. All of these, even basil will grow in a windowsill inside in the wintertime. But basil does not like being cold, so it's gone.
Well, you put them in a pot, put them close. Are we done?
Yeah.
Put them close to your kitchen.
No, when we put down mint, that's pretty much all your mints. Peppermint, mojito mint, orange mint, cinnamon. Just think of all the mints that you can come across. And lavender, I think once again, has to be a little bit protected. It does great because it's a woody herb. So it's not only for scent. I don't know if anybody's tried to roast a chicken with it or make ice cream. It's delicious. But it's very light. I mean, it's not like, woo, okay, grandma just jumped in my chicken. No, it's very light. So anyway, these I think are the best if you're, and incidentally, it's the easiest thing if you're nervous about getting into and making a mistake. In gardening, you learn from your mistakes. But I think herbs are one of the best way to start because they're easy. Now, in all of this that we've talked about, try and keep it as close as you can to a source of water and to some place you go every day. If you've got space between the kitchen door and the garage because you want to look at it. The fall's great around here at this time in Texas because we have less bugs. You still might get some mealy flies or just something, but that's just a blast of water on it. But we're not going to have the caterpillars, which can devastate a garden in the springtime. So that's why just get yourself used to looking in your garden, enjoying it. Make teas out of the herbs that you're growing. Grow some grapes and make some wine, whatever. So this is about the end.
Yep.
So for anybody who has any questions, let's do some Q&A. And then for anybody who wants to stay, you can come and see kind of how our gardens are set up and how you could possibly set up yours.
Let me cover a couple things real quick. Again, we'll have this slide out there. These are some of your references for Ben Master Gardeners and AgriLife. We're all over here in this complex someplace. There's a hotline. Lauren works the hotline on Wednesday mornings. Call her. But
I'm lonely this time of year, so call.
yes, ma'am.
I grow beets every week. I'd rather grow what do you suggest?
I'm sorry.
I said I buy beets every week.
Beets?
Yes, but I'd rather grow them. What do you suggest?
Put some seed in the ground real quick, and
No.
you can grow. I've grown beets just about year round. I
Where
guess
do I find
the beet seed.
Yes.
I would say most nurseries will have them. The feed stores will have them. If you can't find them, I'll definitely get them online anytime. So any of those references online. Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned earlier that avocado trees can grow here. I mean, have you had any success with those?
First.